enlightened. He could enjoy his rights. So to be honest with you, sometimes I get angry. I won't hide it. When I just see that we go to church and just pray, sing, and then leave. No, to be very honest with you. So it's even good that we are speaking today. So Father, maybe yes, tell Bishop. What was the last time as Catholics we organized a demonstration? Our history shows that when Rawlins was in power as a dictator, it was a Catholic church. You Google. You see Archbishop Palmer Buckle. They were the people leading. Palmer Buckle had to flee for his life because later he became too much of a thorn in the flesh of the PNDC administration. Ask Archbishop Peter Akwesi Sapon. But it looks like, and I'm happy I see older people here, but how much have we taught the younger ones? How much? So that we still have the same evil. Okay, let me take off the mask since I'm a bit far from others. I like the mask. It serves several purposes. when I've not shaven well, it's good. It helps. So don't mind if I'm not well shaven. Okay, so there is a lot of, look, lots of that. I'm not alone. I meet Catholics in church. I ask them, and it's the same thing. All I'm saying is that, look, this topic you've given me, I have just come here to say one thing. We are too docile. Too docile. You say governance. Yes. Am I the one to tell you here that some of the roads are not working? Am I the one to say today that, as we speak, 3 of the 6 childhood killer diseases, the vaccines are not available? Am I the one to say it? The experts have been saying so for 1 month now. And so as Catholics, what have we done? So you see why sometimes I get angry when all we do is to just dress up, go to church, sing, pray, and then we go back. How? And I'm very serious. The anger is real. So it's good that you provided this forum. Please tell His Grace the Archbishop that we want to go back to the PNDC days. I've had the opportunity to ask some senior Catholics, and they are saying, that time the Catholic Church led the country in fighting for democracy because it wasn't a democracy. But now that we have a democracy, people are free to choose. Choose what? So we are choosing corruption. Is that what we are doing? Since 1992. So we've chosen corruption after corruption, after corruption, after corruption, after corruption. Is that it? Then the Catholic Bishops' Conference has to look at that matter again. We want the bishops to come and lead us in the demonstrations. What they did in the PNDC days, they should come back. We don't, if some people feel, I don't even see how, if the bishops are leading us to fight the ills in our society, our own members will get up and say no, then they are leaving the church. How? Oh yes, my brother, I'm very happy. We seem to have said the same how. Please, what's your name? The senior man there. What's your name, sir? Sorry? Nana? Nana, I'm very happy. I saw your lips say how in unison with me. Yeah, because I'm very, look, that's the main reason I came. Today, I had a very packed day, but I said, no, let me come. So these things you are saying, I should say from the Constitution. Look, when you read all the literature, at least those that I could read before coming here, they all talk about the role to be played by the citizen. The role to be played by the citizen, that is what is lacking. I'm not the one coming here to tell you that corruption is just, destroying our country. That women are excluded. Disability, people with disability are excluded. That journalists are beaten to pulp, and I'm sure Samson will add a word. And so on and so forth. You can Google the World Governance Index. You see the criteria for measuring governance. You can Google IIAG, Ibrahim Index on African Governance. Everything is on your phone. So I saw that what you have asked me to come and do here is to come and prick your conscience that, look, we are too docile. This coming to church Sunday, pray and go back, is not cutting it. And in actual fact, we are also part of the problem. Because Father Kwani sent me some speaking points. Of course, I'm grateful for that. The first point on his WhatsApp message, the last population census shows Christians are at least about 71% of this population. So today, if corruption is one of our biggest problems, can Christians be exonerated? Can we be exonerated? It's very, very unlikely. Very, very, very unlikely. So what do we come? And you see, I appreciate it. So what I have been doing recently is that I've been reading history. Because, as I said, you know, there are times you just get conflicted. You are like, look, we've been praying since we were children. Look, I went to Legion of Mary, went to all my, as I told you, the charismatic renewal. We've been praying ever since. And we end up with such bad leaders. So I'm like, what is this? So now I'm trying to read history to see maybe there's answer in history. And true, I'm seeing something. And even in the Bible, which is that majority of us are bad people. Yeah, majority of us are bad people. Forgive me, Father, but somehow I don't remember our priests teaching that as we sit in church together, majority of us are bad. No. Rather, as far as I can remember, as a child, anytime I heard a charismatic or Pentecostal teacher talk about demons and principalities and bad people, I said, oh no, they've not had proper education. My Catholic priest goes to seminary for 7, 8 years, or how many years? So when Father preaches, that is it. And so I've grown up with this concept that we are all children of God and we are all good people. So though I went to law school, that thing never left me. I see every individual and I want to embrace. But now I look at our society and I see that no, there is a disconnect. So Father, sorry, but I think I've not been taught well in church. No, forgive me. Maybe you will remind me that, Martin, I preached about bad people. I don't seem to remember. Yes. Hey, so I'm told even the 15 minutes is almost up. Wow. It's left for 5 minutes. So as I've told you, it's good. This one is better. I've told you about Martin Luther King. I've told you about the popes leading the crusades. I've mentioned some of them. Gregory the First, the Second, the Third. At a point, the papacy was stationed in France. They had to fight for 70 years. It was in France. They had to fight to return it. You talk about the Byzantine Empire. That's our own church history. Okay? The troubles we went through. All I'm talking about, fight. So me, I came to talk about fight because the governance they are talking about in the Constitution is made on the assumption that you and I will fight. So if we are not fighting, sorry, I don't know when God is going to come down himself and fight for us. So to come to a bit of the theory, they say, okay, governance, how the authority is exercised. Economic policies are part of governance. So I can remember Article 36, when you read it, it says that the nation should develop, the state should take steps to develop us, but make sure that as we develop, we should protect adequate livelihood. You see, protect the livelihoods of the people. So when you see your government trying to go and build hospital, roads, etc., by taking people's money, like the domestic debt exchange program, that is wrong. It's unconstitutional. Pay people what you owe them. Then the balance you can use to build roads. Do you understand? So if somebody, this example of a medical doctor who government is owed, he has some of the bonds. He needs the money to pay his drugs, etc. Government is not paying him, and government wants to take the money to go and build roads, schools, and etc. No, that's unconstitutional. So you read from Article 1 to the end, there are structures. Maybe 2 more minutes on it, and Father, my time will be done on the provisions there. So you'll find that, okay, Article 41 talks about our role as citizens. What should we do? What should we do? You heard Nana Kofi Tibu talk about how. Means we are docile. We should take steps to what? Curb corruption. Take steps, Article 41, take steps to curb waste. Waste in our public institutions. Protect all our properties. Live together as good citizens, etc. They are all there. Just Google articles, 41. Sum total of it. Be a good person. Be a good person. So now, if your uncle is a minister, and you've seen your uncle buy 4 cars within 1 year, he has built several mansions, and you are not reporting him, you are a bad citizen. You are a bad citizen. The same, even if it's your father. Look, and I'll tell you, there's a case called Republic versus Apietu, Abontindom Hine. This is a case that happened in Chebi in the Gold Coast era. When Oforiata II died, you know this thing you hear about chiefs, when they die, they bury them with the heads of people who are close to them. Yes. So when Oforiata died, Achia Mensah, the chief of Apeja, where you are going to Kumasi Apeja on that road, was killed so that the head will be used to accompany Oforiata. The colonial government said, "Nah lie." They prosecuted them. The point I'm making is that today, there are people in government. Some of them, their grandparents were involved. Top people. Yeah, let's say it. It's our history. If you Google, you see murder in colonial government, blah, blah, blah. Richard Rathbone. You can buy it. The point I want to make there is that people from the royal family came and testified against their own kinsmen. And they were found guilty for killing Achia Mensah. And 3 of them were executed by the colonial government. The rest is this normal lawyer appeal that delayed. So eventually the rest were not executed. I'm telling you that people in the office of the president, some of them, their grandparents were involved. Please, that's our history. The point I'm making is that in Achim, people came and reported their own relations. Today, I went to court. There was a case I was dealing with, a murder case. A mother and a father and a sister are coming to testify against so their son and their brother. 2 parents, they are coming to testify in court against their child. And the sister is coming to testify against his brother. So those of you, your fathers, your uncles are in government looting, and you are not saying anything. It's shame on you. Oh. It's shame on you. That's the governance. I think that is it. Because the rest of the provisions, look, you read the UNDP report on governance. Just Google it. Those are the things I've read. They say that the main problem is the failure of the citizen. The failure of the citizen. This Ghanaian docile citizen. We are our own enemies. Check all the literature. I've already talked about the issue of disability, excluding women. You see it in parliament, right? The fact that we don't want to report evil. Yeah, Father says it's time. So please, that's just it. Google. The speech is out there. Thank you very much.
Can we kindly give Mr. Martin Pibu another round of applause? He represents the gadfly in the very best of the Socratic tradition. And thank you very much for your intervention, for your submission. There's a lot to learn from what he shared with us. And as we said, this process is following the synodal method that Pope Francis is asking us to embrace. Active listening, intentional speaking, respect for each participant's views. And with that comes a moment of pause when we try to appropriate and take what has been shared with us. So now we'll be silent for a bit as we try and appropriate what Mr. Martin Pibu has kindly shared with us this evening. Mr. Martin Pibble, thank you once again. You represent the militant church in its beauty. Thank you once again. Mr. Martin Pibble said a number of things about the role of women and the marginalized and women in parliament, one of his last comments. And it seems like it's just the perfect transition to the next speaker. But even before that, I'd like to mention that we are live on Lumen Christi television, and through the Depsocom of the Accra Archdiocese, we are streaming live. Many thanks to this facility that has been provided for us. Let's give the Accra Archdiocese, Depsocom, and Lumen Christi a round of applause. And so now, we will shift from a man to a woman, and a woman of substance for that matter. It gives me great pleasure and honor to welcome the Member of Parliament for Ketu South, the Honorable Jifa, Abla Jifa Gubashi. Please give her a round of applause as she comes through.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Auntie Joyce and everyone else sitting at the high table. It's terrifying to be speaking when Auntie Joyce is listening. You can only behave yourself when she's sitting in the chair. I'm not very good at singing, but because of the topic Father gave me, I'll dare raise it, and hopefully someone who can sing better than I will pick it up. But this is a song that I learned as a child, a Catholic child and a Catholic woman today. It goes like, whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. Now enter into the home of my Father. Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. So this is how I was raised. This is how I was socialized. This is what the Catholic Church gave me. The Catholic Church taught me to do right and taught me about my conscience, that when I'm right, I know, and when I'm wrong, I know. Sadly, I don't know whether that is still the teaching. I've been missing from church a bit. But we were taught also as children to share the little that we had. We were taught to care for the poor. We were taught to care for the marginalized. I recall very vividly my father. He's 97 years old now. Yes, we've been teasing him that he's 102, calculating from my older brother's age. But his military documents show that he's 97, so we accept that. He retired from the Ghana forces, and we went to live in Medina. And he had a bus, we call it a Gege bus those days, the mini bus. And he'll go and bring children from the Osu Children's Home to Medina Catholic Church. And families will come and pick these children and take them home on Friday evenings. And they bring them back on Sundays, and then Dada would drive them back to the Osu Children's Home. Any child who was not picked ended up in my home, in our home, and Mama would be cooking from morning till night. So this is how I was raised by the Catholic Church. And then, before I went to St. Louis Secondary School, I joined Dada to drive from Sunyani to Kumasi. And he was going to the Center for Spiritual Renewal, where eventually the Catholic Charismatic Union was born. And as a founding member, I recall also the kinds of things that they did with Reverend Father Sivers, Job Visa, Sister Marie de Rose, who became our headmistress when I went to St. Louis Secondary School. So these are the values that I had as a child, to care for the poor and the marginalized. There are lots of things that Bible says that guide me, and perhaps guide many of us who are here, to share what we have with the poor. So if Father says, talk about care for the poor and marginalized, my examples can only come from the Bible and the way in which I was socialized. Matthew talks about it. Ecclesiastes talks about it. Exodus. There are many Bible quotations that teach us about caring for the poor and marginalized. But this democracy that we have embraced has also given us people who are poor in mind and in spirit. And not just those who are poor because they don't have money or because they don't have food. People are marginalized because of their thinking, because they stand for something. So who are the poor, really? Is it when you can't find food today or you don't have something to drink that makes you poor? Is your attitude also poor? There are times when I sit in Parliament and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Because we are saying something that's in the law that I disagree with. But I'm there as a lawmaker, and I'm thinking, I have lived as a poor person before. I'm in contact with them on a daily basis from when I was a child. These policies you are bringing, which of them is going to address their needs? I'm sitting in Parliament, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and reading about luxury tax on sanitary towels. You dare call buying sanitary towel and put a tax on it and call it luxury? You think I'm happy menstruating every month? I'm one of the few women who was very happy that I don't menstruate anymore because I'm menopausal. But there are people whose livelihoods change because they can't afford sanitary towels. There are children in my constituency who will miss school for 5 days, 7 days because they're menstruating. And I'm sitting in that chamber thinking, I'm there because of them. How do I fight the system so they will benefit, so they are not marginalized? And so when I don't know what to do, then I ask myself, maybe this is not where you should be. But no, I'm going to be there. I'm in there, and I'm going to stay in there and do my bit. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I've also realized that sometimes the poor don't even want to be saved. The poor don't even want to hear the steps that you will give them so their lives will change. Recently, I was speaking to some people in my constituency, and I said that I have evidence to show that I was selling kelewele in Trinidad and Tobago. And I whispered to Samson that when we were in school, he and I were in Legon together. I was doing a lot of business and I didn't pay attention to student politics at the time. So when Martin was handing over to them, I don't remember that, but somehow I passed my exams and here I am. I was telling them I've braided hair so I could pay my school fees. I told them that's the reason why I danced. That's the reason why I was acting. And yet the people I was speaking to did not even appreciate that experience sharing was so they can think in a different way of their situation. They're thinking that I'm showing off. So who are poor? And how do we define this poverty, these poor people we are supposed to look out for? How do we look out for them? They want to hear what they want to hear. They may not be ready to hear what they need to hear. What is my church doing now? Dear Reverend Fathers, the kind of things that I was taught as a child in St. Catherine's Catholic Church in Burma Camp, and then Queen of Peace Catholic Church in Medina, and then St. Peter's Catholic Church in Usu, are different from the things I hear now when I come to church. Is that the reason why the poor don't even realize that they are poor and they need to hear me tell them about how I broke the cycle of poverty in my family for myself? Who is preparing people so they can hear and appreciate that you can also be the person in your family that helps everyone else along? Who is preparing them so it's not coming from a politician and so it's pushed, there's a pushback? And yet I am supposed to be speaking for the poor and the marginalized. The same people who sometimes make you feel as if it's not your place to tell us. Maybe you're a city girl or you're a city man or you have a cutout for you so you can afford to save us. But Bible doesn't teach me to be critical of those who need my help. Bible doesn't teach me to be judgmental. Bible doesn't tell me, or my faith doesn't tell me, that I should forget about the marginalized and the poor because they are not appreciating what I do. It's taught me other ways in which I can do it. And I hope that we can all speak up when it matters most for the poor and the marginalized. So we don't leave it in the hands of politicians, because most often when people see you and you are a member of parliament or a minister, before they see that you're a woman who has been poor before or a woman who is rich, they see the colors. They may see you as NDC or MPP or CPP. So what they need to hear to change their own lifestyle is blocked. I had opportunity to speak at the Catholic Church in Parliament. Father allowed me to do a sermon. And I asked the MPs, the clerk's office staff, the parliamentary staff, I asked them, and Mr. Speaker, the second deputy speaker is Catholic. And he was there and I asked him, I said, when you see me in the chamber, do you see me first as a woman? Do you see me as a Ghanaian? Do you see me as an NDC MP? When you see me, what do you see? And I ask you to. When you see me, what do you see? Do you see me capable of doing the work that I have asked the people of Ketu South to give me? And do you position yourself to help me? Because you know that it's a constituency that has a lot of people unemployed, poor, marginalized. And when you see me and you know that I can do that, how do you position yourself to assist me to do the work? Because you know I can do the work. So how do you see me listening to me this evening? You think it's politics? Do you think it's because I'm Catholic? Do you think because I'm a woman? Because I've been poor before? That I've been able to change my story? What do you see? When you've answered those questions, I hope that you will not wait once a year to donate to the church to reach out. I hope that you will not wait once a year to speak up for women who are marginalized. And tomorrow will be the day that we'll be hearing a lot of speeches. A lot of speeches in favor of women, women empowerment. Marginalization is beyond that once a year speech. To be able to cure that in this country is not about waiting once a year to make that speech. So I was just talking to the leaders, the women leaders in Parliament, and they were asking me about, so our statement tomorrow, do you have anything to ask? I said no. And I wish you wouldn't even make a statement. I wish that the 40 of us in that room can show real, tangible efforts being made, not once a year speeches. How is it that 275 people are in a room expected to help govern this country, to make our country great? 275, and 40 of us are women. And it's only recently that we are 40, by the way. I'm only 2 years in Parliament. They were less. now that they are 40, what are we doing as marginalized people in the 275 chamber? We're waiting to make speeches after speeches after speeches, and then we go and sit. It's good that we can break the glass ceiling. It's good that a few of us are moving forward. But can the few of us who move forward, can we hold the door so a lot more can come through? Or because I'm NDC saying it, if you're MPP, you don't approve. Because when I say that, it's because I'm saying it so that you will look bad. No. No. There's so much we can do. There's so much we need to do. There's so much we must do. Samson said, not Samson, Mr. Kwebu Martin says that it's not enough to come to church and sing and pray. And I totally agree with that. Fathers, Reverend Fathers, these days, you need to be praying for me more. Because some mornings on Sundays, I wake up and I'm thinking, so I'm going to drive all the way to the church and sing and pray, and I can do it here. And then the motivation just goes through the window, and I stay at home and I pray. There's something that we are not doing right. You used to nourish my mind and my heart and my spirit with the kind of teaching that you did in church, and all the other activities that Father Visa used to organize at the Queen of Peace Catholic Church that I participated in. I was a junior marshallan. The kinds of things that you taught us. So now I'm older, so you can't teach me anymore. But I need to be fed so I can feed. I must have more reason to come to church instead of just coming because as a Catholic I'm expected to. There should be something that should drive me. And I shouldn't feel as if when I come to church, then I'm offered a seat in front because I'm a former minister and I'm an MP now. It doesn't matter. The way we treat each other must encourage and inspire. The way we treat each other must feed us, not only put food on our table. Caring must go beyond that. Caring must go beyond once in a while taking money from us to give to the poor. Real care is that you ask yourself, what can I do to help Jifa to do what she's doing? Is what she's doing right? Is it wrong? How can I empower her more? That's caring for me. And I'm using myself only an example, but we do it for other people. We can't do well if we are not happy for people who are making an effort. Father, do the sign if the time is up. So, we're citizens who are both rich and poor, each of us. We're citizens who are rich and we're poor. We're rich because maybe your bank account is good. But if you don't care for someone, when you can't do that, then you're poor in spirit. We need to think through how we live as Christians so that the figures that was quoted by Martin becomes relevant and makes us proud. How is it that we can be 70 plus Ghanaians who are Christians and our country is where it is? And indeed, shame on us. Thank you very much.
I think the Honorable Member of Parliament deserves a bigger round of applause. Poignant and driving home a point in many ways that speaks to us across board. Spoke to me as a priest about the issues that we need to pay attention to. As always, we shall have our synodal moment of silence, of appropriation, of taking note of what it is that has touched us, has agitated us, has troubled us in what was shared, appropriating it in silence now. Our next submission is going to be on Ghana's 1992 Constitution. And if I'm not mistaken, that Constitution makes room for a president and a vice president. I have been presiding as moderator for a while now. I'd like to introduce the vice president, the assistant director of the Arupe Jesuit Institute, Father Evans Adomakwapia. Please give him a round of applause. He will be leading the conversation from this point on. As now, I allow him to welcome the next speaker.
Thank you very much, my boss, my director, Father Kwaniadi. Yeah, so as we've been educated thus far, poverty has many faces, many definitions. So if we define it very well, more or less we are all poor. And so we also need to understand the Constitution very well so that we can be active citizens and not spectators. So I have the honor to invite no other person than Mr. Samson Ladi Anyenini, the 2019 Journalist of the Year, and the Joy News Far hosts. I think by the time he's done, we'll be experts in the 1992 Constitution. Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening. So because I get involved in this kind of business, in the last year and this year so far, I've moderated quite a number of programs that have discussed the 1992 Constitution and the need for it to be amended. And any time before I start, because I know how television works, I plead with the participants to occupy the front seats. So please, kindly do me that honor. I'm taking a minute of my time to do that. And those sitting at the, extreme row, I think you can come inside here. And those sitting here too can come here. Senior, I'm holding the mic here, so I can ask you to do a few things. All right. Thank you so very much. Thank you. And Father, please, when I have 5 minutes to close, wave at me. I actually believe in the interaction time than the presentation that has to be made in 15 minutes. You can talk about our Constitution in 15 minutes. It won't work. So this is what I propose to do. That as Christians, we are supposed to be not spectators, but we are supposed to be citizens. The president preached it, and you have adopted it. So I want you to search deep into you and confirm to yourself that you have actually been a citizen and not a spectator. Truth is that if I decided to read certain portions of the Constitution to you, it may sound to you like I was reading the scriptures, because that's the truth. I don't need to quote the scriptures to you for you to realize that the things the Constitution requires of you to do are modeled from the scripture, so to speak. If you want, let's try it. And my brother Martin Pebu started by referring to some of the provisions. So let's take, for example, his favorite Article 41 that he read to us. Article 41 says this is your duty and your obligation as a citizen of Ghana. You are to promote the prestige and good name of Ghana and respect the symbols of the nation. You are supposed to promote the prestige and good name of Ghana and respect the symbols of the nation. To uphold and defend the Constitution and the law, to foster national unity and live in harmony with others. If nothing rings like a scripture to you, when I read foster national unity and live in harmony with others, unless you're not a good Christian, some scripture rings in your mind, correct? It says, as much as it is possible, do what? Live peaceably. Now, it says to respect the rights, freedoms, and legitimate interests of others, and generally, to refrain from doing acts detrimental to the welfare of other persons. Don't do what is detrimental to the welfare of other persons. It says to work conscientiously in your lawfully chosen occupation. When the scripture invites you to check how the ant does its work, when the scripture tells you how the lazy ants, it says to protect and preserve public property, Martin's favorite. To protect and preserve public property and expose and combat misuse and waste of public funds and property. To contribute to the well-being of the community where that citizen lives. To defend Ghana and render national service when necessary. To cooperate with lawful agencies in the maintenance of law and order. To declare your income honestly to the appropriate and lawful agencies and to satisfy all tax obligations. When you are invited to give to Caesar, pay your taxes. To protect and safeguard the environment. Now, because of the times we live in, I told myself I have a number of papers I'm improving upon that once in a while, when I get such invitations, they just fit. And I just pick one and improve upon it and tweak it and make a presentation. But I said I won't do that. I won't do any structured presentation. Now, the Bible says in Proverbs 11:10 that when the righteous prosper, what happens? The city rejoices. But when what? The wicked perish, there are shouts of joy. If you have not thought about that scripture deeply, think about it again. When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. If you will not be a citizen, but be a spectator, you clearly will not prosper. You are over 70% of you on this land. There's a reason when the wicked perish, There are shouts for joy. Because the wicked will terrorize us. The wicked will ensure that there is continued war. There is continued bloodshed. But the righteous will ensure that we live in peace, that we live in harmony. If our lives are supposed to be modeled along Christ, can you imagine what a world we will live in? This morning, we're told of the story where the soldiers have besieged a town, a place in Ashaiman. They gathered many of the people there and flogged them because they did what? They killed a soldier. So everybody in that community is a suspect. What the law completely prohibits, those who help us to enforce the law are doing exactly what the law says they shouldn't do. We don't enforce the law with lawlessness. That's why when there was a time the Accra regional minister was encouraging a group of security, including police and army, to flog people, get them to squat, get them to sweep, and were sweeping dusty roads in Medina. And I saw elderly men, elderly people, dressed up in the morning going to work. And because they also made the mistake of not using the footbridge that had been provided, they were subjected to such humiliation. And I sat on radio and TV and asked the question, imagine that elderly man, and I put some of the photographs on TV and asked, imagine that person was your parent. Would you do that to them? They sweep in the dust and they are moving into their workplace. Imagine how it feels. They are squatting in the sun and people are driving past and watching them. And I said, when you do this as a state, as officials of state, what you're doing is that you are encouraging and promoting lawlessness. I called on the president to call the minister to order. That didn't seem to mean much. We had just come from a time when a military officer had been killed. And we're all saying this was bad, Major Mahama. It shouldn't happen. And we're encouraging that. How do you allow to do what is completely against the law and expect that others will be inspired to follow the law, rather went into the Galamsey fields, took hold of excavators and set them alight. The law was very specific, and it still is. And for not using the footbridge, the law is very specific and clear. For not using the footbridge, you are infringing the law, and you are supposed to be arrested and taken to a court. It's a misdemeanor, and you'll be punished for it. You may be asked to pay a fine, and maybe, if you are not lucky, spend some 3 months or 6 months in jail. That is how you order a society, not a society of strong men. We went in the name of fighting Galamsey. What did we do? we set alight excavators. The law is very clear what to do with the excavators that have been seized. It says, get the police, impound them, and let the police keep them. Take inventory of them, and once you are done with the prosecutions, distribute them. Distribute them to the entities of state that need them, and publish to the world, to citizens, that you have distributed them. So we know that you have taken one to this assembly. And we know too many places where the assemblies need just one excavator. And the sort of relief that it will bring to the people. We didn't follow the law. Here is my point. As Christians, if the nation will prosper, if there will be rejoicing in the city, it will be because the righteous is prospering. And I'm not referring to prosperity in the terms only of, financial wealth. Our well-being. The Constitution has a lot of things it says to us and what we ought to do. I cannot spend 15 minutes to preach to you about the Constitution. The Constitution says, for example, that the most enduring democracy is the one in which the people's economic well-being is secured. You live in a country where the people who make donations to you, who give you aid, they say every year in your country, here, this Ghana, 3 billion United States dollars cannot be accounted for. It is people who superintend over those monies. 3 billion United States dollars cannot be accounted for each year in this country. Ask yourself, how much are we going to seek from the IMF? We're asking for 3 billion, without which our economy will collapse. In fact, where our economy is now, if you have no idea how some people are suffering, some people are actually doing what Christians are used to saying about hell. There's gnashing of teeth. People are really wailing. You may have a stable job and you are earning quite a bit. But I suspect some of us have friends. We have relations in the villages, in towns. And every day they are calling upon you. Even your friends, some of them in the city. Sometimes the amounts of money they seek from you. Sometimes you go to bed and you ask yourself, what is happening? People with children, fathers and mothers, the amount of money they are begging you to give them. Here's my point. The president of the ECOWAS court, Justice Edward Amoako Asante, says we should amend the constitution. Justice Poaman of the Supreme Court says, yes, we should amend the constitution. Fix the country. Oliver Barker-Vormawor, he started this sometime in 2020, and it got caught up. Those who were denying that there was any need to amend the constitution, now everybody agrees that we should amend the constitution. Amending the constitution is good. But you see, it is said somewhere that bad people will make a good constitution very bad. if we are good people as Christians living in this country, what are we doing to avoid all the wrong that we see? This very poor, small African country called Ghana. The constitution gives at most 19 ministers or so that we should have. Yet we have a president who justified 126 ministers. And we sat and watched. At his own pleasure, he's reduced that to 86 or 87. And he says, praise me for it. So we need to amend the constitution. Because you can't always have good people who will lead you. So if you amend the constitution and it insists that you must have poor Ghana, you must have only 10 ministers, that's it. The president can't do more than that. We continue to complain. Institutions that are making losses all the time. They make losses every year. State-owned organizations. And yet, they are appointed onto these institutions chief executives and as many as 4 deputies. And if you know, from where some of us sit, some of the deputies have practically no job to do. The Constitution calls on us to ensure that these things are not done. So I agree with Martin. I've heard him over a period, and I understand his frustration. Almost every Ghanaian, there's a way to measure what is the majority view. Time is up. Thank you. There's a way to measure what is the majority view. Majority of Ghanaians overwhelmingly said, let the finance minister take a rest. He's tired. He's led us into this. But if anything at all, he may not command sufficient credibility, if there is any at all, to continue to be at the forefront. Guess what? Even over 80 MPs in the governing party did not succeed because the party itself supported the president. So the president says, I'll keep him. So what? The president is more powerful than all of us. The Constitution says in its preamble that the powers of government shall be exercised for the welfare of the people. It says that sovereignty, that is ultimate power. Of course, when we talk ultimate power in the church, we know its limit. It says ultimate power in the country resides in the people. In another verse, it says it springs from the people. And we elect people to exercise it on our behalf and for our welfare. So tell me, if what the Constitution says is what is being practiced, it is not. We have gotten to a point where the parties have just hijacked the democracy. It's no more a democracy. I think it's something like a partitocracy. Once the party says this is the way, the majority of us, we don't matter. And yet this is a nation of over 70% Christians. So my call this evening is that we must in fact respond to the call of the president to be citizens and not spectators. And more importantly, as Christians, we have more than an obligation to do that, to ensure that there is rejoicing in the city. I'll await your questions. Thank you very much.
I think we can do more than this. Let's put it up for Mr. Sampson. Rightly so, the president said we are citizens. But we have not been citizens because we have not been able to hold him accountable to what he's supposed to do. When the citizens called on him to do something, but he says, well, you've given me power, so I'll hold onto it until you take it back. So what can we do as citizens, listening to what Mr. Sampson just said? Can we still remain firm and call on the president to follow the Constitution? Thank you very much, Mr. Sampson. So as we are taking a few moments to synthesize whatever that we have listened to, and then also jot down a few questions, if there are any, so that when it is time for questioning, we can bring them up for the discussion. We are almost at the end of our program. We are about to listen to the last speaker, and she's going to sum everything to make us understand that as citizens, it's not only about just the human beings, but we also have to look around us, our environment, that for us to be good citizens, for us to take good care of our well-being, we also need to look at the physical environment. So I have the honor, the pleasure to invite Dr. Antoinette Thibodakun to lead us through the care of our common home. Dr.